unchanging one, who was and is to come. You've opened up your throne for me. Unchanging one, with empty hands I've come. I've touched your holy robe. I'm whole, unchanging one.
Where do you even begin to address the great city of Jerusalem? Scripture, no doubt, is the best place. Psalm 48, great is the Lord and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in his holy mountain, beautiful in elevation. The joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great King. Jerusalem means city of peace. Unfortunately, it has not known much peace throughout its history. The Babylonians came from the east, snatched it from the Jews. Alexander marched through this city. Rome, interestingly, trod the city under its foot for some 666 years. 666, interestingly. But it is a city that witnessed the Prince of Peace himself, Isaiah 9:6. And the city witnessed the life of Jesus through the various stages of his life. Beginning in dedication, recorded in Luke chapter 2. Luke also tells us that Jesus came here at a young age of 12 years of age. And I believe that when he was here at 12 during Passover, there were events that took place that forecasted, gave a shadow of what was going to take place in the future. What I'm referring to is Jesus, along with Mary and Joseph, of course, and his brothers and sisters and the caravan of others, came into the city during Passover. When they were leaving, however, there was some disconnect, and Jesus couldn't be found. And Mary and Joseph had to come back to the city. And they didn't see him for 3 days, interestingly. And finally, when they did, Mary said to Jesus, "Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously." And he said to them, "Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" Interesting. It's Passover, commemorating Israel's exit from Egypt. Passover celebrated by the shedding of lamb's blood. Jesus is not seen during that Passover for 3 days. He says to Mary and Joseph he was about his Father's business. 21 years later, he would come into this same city during Passover. And he would not be seen for 3 days. He would give his life, he'd be buried, he'd resurrect on the third day. It was all about the Father's business. No wonder the city of Jerusalem is unique. It's chosen by God to reveal himself to the world, and ultimately one day to rule and reign from. For the Lord has chosen Zion, and he has desired it for a dwelling place. Psalm 132:17. One day, the great city of Jerusalem will actually live out its name. It will be the city of peace because the Lord is coming again. In fact, he ascended to heaven from the very mount that I'm standing. And the angels comfort the disciples that he's going to come back in like manner, according to Zechariah 12:14. Every eye will see him. He's coming in the glory of the Almighty. And one day he will come not to bear a cross. That's already taken place. This time to wear the crown as the Prince of Peace.
Like any other ancient city, had to be by a local water source. Back then, there was no knowledge how to carry water from far away or how to store water, and therefore, wherever the spring was, that's where people lived. In the case of Jerusalem, there's only one permanent water source that flows all year round. This one is known as the Spring of Gihon. The Spring of Gihon is down over there, right at the bottom of the valley. You can hardly see a staircase going up, and therefore Salem and Jebus, and later on the city of David, were in that location simply because it was closer to the spring than any other place. So the very beginning of Jerusalem, the same town that Abraham saw as he was taking Isaac to go up to the mountain and offering to God. But the same town that Melchizedek was king over would be down in the valley by the spring of Gihon. This is way down below there. Ezekiel 16:3 gives us a very interesting description of Jerusalem's history. The prophet is speaking in Babylon to the people, reminding them of the history of town, and he's mentioning that Jerusalem, the father was an Amorite and the mother was a Jebusite. Well, it's not a coincidence mentioning the Amorites and the Jebusite, because probably these were the two ethnic groups or nations that were in Jerusalem when Melchizedek was the king over it, and of course the Jebusites. So David City, the capital of the nation that was established by David, was a very small town. Around the spring, about 1,500 people lived in that Jerusalem simply because the water source could not provide life to more than that number. So through the times of David as a king, with the vast empire conquered, all of it was ruled over from a small town, a small village in Jerusalem. David was the one that purchased some land in the area. He was the one that asked permission from God to build a house to him and purchase the land that will be known as Temple Mount in years to come. But this whole mountain, which can be called the Eastern Hill or Mount Moriah, Temple Mount, or even Mount Zion, biblically speaking, started around the spring. David purchased the land up there for 50 shekels or 600 according to Samuel or to Chronicles, and Solomon was the one to build a house for God on top of the threshing floor that David purchased from the Jebusite nobleman called Aruna or Aravna in Hebrew. David, as King Hezekiah, covered a small area. Hezekiah was the one that really expanded the city to the other hill, which was known as the Upper City or the Western Hill. Hard to see from here because everything is so well built up, it's hard to focus on the topography. But the spring, of course, was the source of life, and therefore Jerusalem started as a small village by the spring, way down in the valley, covering a very small area.